Love and health form the foundation and pillars that support all that you do to create fulfillment and success in every aspect of your life. Love within us guides our paths while our health enables us to drive forward. The two are inseparable and vital for growth and reaching your fullest potential. Welcome to Love and Health in America with Dr. Doohi Lee and Jens Johnson. Dr. Lee is an international speaker, author, inventor of the Diamond Matrix, and medical director of Advanced Surgical Arts.
The way I see my role is that I'm a guide.
Jens Johnson, the Mindset Master, is a best-selling author, speaker, and executive managing director of Dallas eWomen Network. Please join them and explore all the facets of love and health to achieve and live your abundant life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Doohi Lee and Jens Johnson.
Hello, everybody, and
Hi.
Welcome to another episode of Love and Health in America. And I'm here with my most favorite doctor.
Thank you. It's
Dr.
good to be
Lee.
here.
I mean,
as
I
always.
mean, you are my favorite doctor. You are.
You're my favorite co-host.
And listen, hopefully he's
Partner in
going to become one of your most favorite doctors as well. So we are really, really excited for our episode today because
Yes.
it is just an extension of really what we've been talking
exactly,
about
yeah.
with the love and the help and boosting your immune
The
system.
Yeah. And last episode we talked about vaccines, and now it's a continuity into coming back into ourselves.
Right, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So
Right.
we're going to be talking today with an incredible guest that we have. You're going to love her, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Anne Redelfs, MD, is a retired psychiatrist and author of 4 books about developmental healing. The Awakened Storm, Illness Can Be the Cure, With Every Addiction, Infants Are Trying to Meet Their Needs, and What the World Needs Now. Trauma, Recover for Ourselves and Our Children. She enjoys public speaking on each of these topics as well, and currently resides in North Dallas, where she practices what she calls soul listening and soul gardening. And listen, I am so excited to welcome you to the show because we're going to be talking about what is the psychological immune system. So, I mean, we've already been talking about all of this, but before you really start on that topic, I am sure everybody's interested in how did you get to where you are now? What was that journey like?
Well, I went through pediatrics first for a couple of years before I went into psychiatry. And there we were focused on child development, naturally. Where were kids in their developmental milestones? Were they supposed to be? And gosh, it just was imprinted in my brain. And there was also a lot of child abuse, meaning kids were stuck in their development. They didn't progress because of some of the overwhelming trauma. And this was unmistakable trauma, broken bones, gonorrhea under the microscope in a preschooler.
Wow.
And so it was just so startling, the experience, that it penetrated every cell. And I went on to psychiatry with still that focus. And suddenly we're looking at everything completely differently. We were looking at people in terms of genetic illnesses and biochemical defects.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what about development?
Yeah,
Because it was
yeah.
the same population. What happened to these traumatized kids?
Yeah.
And what I decided, listening to them, was that they were trying to tell their story through their symptoms.
Yeah.
But people weren't listening. They suddenly had a different paradigm. And they heard them in terms of genetics rather than their personal story.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's a bit of a tie-in to some of the children that we work with, even in developmental delay, even autism. They have a different language that
Yeah.
we need to really figure out and understand how they're trying to speak, and that kind of goes exactly into what you're talking about.
I'm thinking of one woman, she was diagnosed as bipolar, and every time she had a manic episode, she would be in the library reading book after book on incest. It's not hard.
Well,
People
yeah,
are
exactly.
really trying to get their needs met, and
yeah.
we need to be listening
Sure.
at that level.
But the thing is it's awareness. So this is a gift. I'm telling you, you have a gift, because I would assume, and we all know what happens when you do that, but I'm just talking here in between two physicians.
Yeah.
But I would assume in your medical training these are things that aren't talked about.
Right.
I mean,
It's not.
you don't
It's
talk,
not.
it's like abuse. You know, here you are as a pediatrician and you're seeing this abuse, and it's people are just, they're turning a blind eye. And then even you know, when we were discussing how, you know, you might have somebody who has a sore throat and they are complaining about a sore throat and they think that they're coming down with a cold, but physiologically there's nothing wrong with them. It's something psychologically that's wrong with them. And you say, oh my gosh, you know, it's because I think you asked the right questions. You know, I would assume, and I don't know about you, Dr. Lee, but I would assume again that if somebody is telling, you know, they've been diagnosed as bipolar and they're having an episode, people aren't asking them, well, what were you doing when you started having the episode? You know, so you're asking some of the most vital, important questions. And there are so many people that are suffering with these psychological issues, but you've really tied it into what's called your psychological immune system.
Well, let me tell you a story actually that comes to mind. I'm thinking of one teenager came into the clinic with an asthma attack, and I did ask her that question, what was going on when this attack came on? And she said she was watching a movie about a girl who had been incested by her father. Oh. And the obvious question was, have you had any incest? Mm-hmm. She started crying, and it all came out.
Catharsis.
She hadn't told anyone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the asthma attack was the flag.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's
Let
actually
us know.
quite a bit of medical evidence. Things like asthma, it's so much is actually stress and emotionally related.
Yeah.
You know, even as an infant. I mean, there's of course, you know, physical effect as well from allergens and whatnot, but there's a huge emotional component to this, and so that's really interesting. So, can you give some examples of, you know, other cases that you've seen, other patients you've dealt with?
Well, let me first describe exactly what the psychological immune system is. Our psychology is the emotional body, the heart, and the mind, both of which react to something that's foreign to our well-being. So let's look at the emotional immune system first. Our bodies react to what is contrary to our human nature, and we react with negative emotions. For example, in a healthy person, these reactions are appropriate to circumstances. We've experienced a loss, and so we cry. We've experienced injustice, so we are angry. And something threatens us, we're fearful. Biologically built-in mechanisms. But what happens in our society is so often we think we know better, and we tell children, oh, you shouldn't be feeling that way, and we correct them.
Yeah.
And the kid learns that what's natural to him, there's something wrong.
Right.
So he starts changing it. And why this is a problem is we need these flags. It's like the white blood cell count in the blood when we have an infection. It's saying, hey, the immune system is triggered here. These flags of our negative reactions are saying there's something wrong here. If we don't have them, we often don't know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And so the problem can persist.
Well, even something as, you know, innocuous as telling a boy, oh, boys don't cry. Mm-hmm. You know, we're all, I mean, I certainly grew up with that kind of saying, oh yeah, boys are brave, boys don't cry. If something hurts them, you know, you learn to suppress it. And something like that, I think something similar is told to girls as well.
Well, definitely. And it's not just the parents. I mean, because listen, I come from a family of, there's 6 of us. So, you know, it's what, I think the siblings can
we trigger
cause,
everything. I'm the oldest
you know,
of 5,
I think
so
the siblings can cause a lot, you know, I mean, but there's real damage that has been done to many people. So how does somebody start to recognize and become aware of maybe things that they're experiencing that, you know what, maybe this isn't physical, maybe this is psychological? I mean, how do they become aware of that?
Well, I'm a firm believer that there's no separation. Any physical problem, as much as we might have all the laboratories that show it is physical, there's also an emotional component. There's also a mental component, just because we are all of that.
Right.
And we need to get beyond the just looking at the one thing that we're comfortable with to look at the whole thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And about what you said about boys, I brought in a little demonstration.
Oh, you did?
Meaning
Okay.
that we are raised as a whole soul.
Sure.
I mean, we should be raised as a whole soul. We are born this way, I believe. But what comes along is people telling us, like boys, get rid of your tender, emotional, feminine side.
Sure.
That's not manly. So what happens? These boys
Yeah.
separate from what's natural to their being. And if this was truly unwanted, it gets tucked away in the unconscious mind and forgotten about.
Right.
But if this is not part of our growth-producing life experience, it stays stuck at a very young psychological age.
Right. Exactly.
And its behavior is true of its psychological age, not the body's physical age.
Yeah.
Now that's a real problem because the person now has a split personality.
Uh-huh.
And this side may grow to manhood, having no awareness. There's a little girl inside, and she's acting out her true life story, unbeknownst to him.
Exactly, exactly. And that kind of goes into, I think before we started, I gave a little article in a concept called affective immunology. There's a whole thing on there. I think that kind of ties into exactly what you're talking about. You know, by ignoring a vital portion, a vital part of your emotional makeup and really deep spiritual makeup, which makes us a whole, that disjointed affect literally has a profound implication in your own physical immunology, which is what we're talking about, and how you stay healthy.
And let's go back to the sore throats, because to me, in working with so many kids with sore throats, they were sore, the word means angry, sore about how their voice was being treated, meaning it was stifled, it was ignored, or maybe they were encouraged to speak something that wasn't true to their nature. So what happens to that anger? Well, it produces something in the body. We often store it in the body. And so much of physical illness is that internalized emotion that has never been expressed.
Right. So listen, I mean, when you were doing the paper, The Soul, I would
was like,
assume, here I am. Y'all are gonna think I'm crazy, but I would think there are a lot of men that's how they were raised. And so
Still are.
you're
Definitely changed.
you're dealing with these grown men that have a side of them that has been so suppressed and are, they're at whatever age they locked that away. And now they're having problems in their relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how do you fix that? And I don't know if you can fix it, but how do you make it better?
Well, I tell couples that they need to be raising the children on the inside at the same time as they're raising the children on the outside. That is a healthy marriage.
That is so, well, I mean, and that is one thing, and I've heard this before, where you've got to come on my other podcast that's called Wake Up in the Word, because for this whole entire month we're talking about marriage. But I have heard that if you go into a marriage with the intent of realizing you're both broken, I mean, let's just face it, we are all broken in some form or fashion. And if you go into that marriage, into that relationship with the intent of, like you said, wanting to help to the best of your ability, make some of those childhood injuries heal or better, instead of tearing one another down. But how can you do that when people don't even want to be aware that they've got issues? I mean, how do you do that, doctors? I'm here.
Well, let me go into the other part of the psychological immune system, which is the immunity of the mind, the immune system of the mind. Let's take the kids with the sore throats, holding back their voices, they come to believe there must be something wrong with my voice because people don't want it. Or there may be something inherently wrong with me because people don't want what I'm expressing. And so these false beliefs permeate their minds. And what does our mental immune system do? It's very creative. So it makes up stories to make these painful beliefs more palatable and make the person feel better about themselves.
So let me ask you something. Because when we first met, you mentioned this phrase, soul listening, and I thought soul whisperer, well, kind of close. But so tell me about this. This is a really fascinating idea, and also I want to understand from you how you're using these techniques to. Obviously, you must be seeing patients and treating people, and how you're integrating the whole idea of spirituality, emotionality, as well as the health of the person. But the whole concept of soul listening is really fascinating to me. So if you could spend a few minutes kind of explaining that, and how you came up with the phrase even.
Well, I see everything that's going on in the physical body as communication, a metaphor for something the soul is communicating. Like, take a typical person who has too much of something in their physical body. That means that they are too much in some area of their emotionality, or some thought process is too much and they need to tone it down. Or it can be the opposite. They're too little, they're holding themselves back, and their body's giving them too much, saying, come on, we need more from you. So it can be either an indication of where you are emotionally, mentally, or you need more of that.
I see.
A recommendation of treatment.
So how do you start the whole listening process? But let's say I'm a client coming in to see you. So
What are your symptoms?
Oh, I see. Okay, I got a backache.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back is behind you.
Right.
There's something you're putting behind you that is not over. It hasn't been dealt with. It's still causing you pain.
I have a very bad lumpy mattress.
Okay. Something
Wake
you're
up with it every morning.
Well, there might be some bad things going on in that bedroom. They're not
No, I don't want to get into all that. It's so bad. No, but this is really a physical thing.
But physical things have metaphoric
Of course.
value. Like, for example, I'm thinking of someone walking out of their home and tripping over a rock.
Sure.
Okay, they damaged their knee in doing that. Where are they rocky in their personality? Rigid, unchanging, unmoving. That's the problem. And their body is trying to bring that to their attention.
By tripping
Tripping on a rock.
on a rock.
On a rock.
I'm telling you, well, the thing is that, one of the flags, I guess, is what we're talking about is, when something happens and it's really not that big a deal. I mean, like a normal emotional response would be, maybe just a little bit of disappointment. And then some people get so upset about it. When somebody overreacts emotionally or underreacts. I mean, they lost a parent and they're like, oh, well, it was like, I mean, I know people that,
Really?
I know
Really?
people like that.
Wow.
That are you've just lost a parent
Yeah.
and it's not, it's like, oh,
Just-
So that's gotta be something that you're talking about where somebody has too much of something or too little of something. But,
Yes.
what I'm thinking about is if we would just all come to the conclusion that we are a work in progress, that our identity comes from within instead of externally, and that we have to continually be searching inside for who we are and what we're doing. Because when you were talking about how your mind is creative and it will come up with stories, I was listening to a talk, and it was on audio, and the gentleman said 50% of what we're thinking isn't even accurate. We've made it up. We've made it up to fit our own narrative.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
when I heard that, and so they said, people are upset about things, but when you realize that 50% of what you're thinking about that isn't even the truth because you've made it up, so the narrative makes you feel better. That's when
So true.
So it's like, so what are you upset about? But again, how do you start the practice of becoming aware? I mean, obviously, I think it would be amazing to have a session with you. But are there other people that are practitioners like yourself that are doing things like this?
There are a few, but
Okay.
one thing I think is real important to mention, that unlike the physical immune system, which is largely internal, we react to what's in our bodies or on our bodies, the psychological immune system is largely external, particularly when we're young, meaning a child reacts and the parent comes over to find out what the problem is. So it's real important to be alert to the people in our lives that are reacting. Who is suffering a loss, so we can console them? Who is anguishing over injustice, so we can support their cause? And who is rightfully fearful, that we can protect them? So that's one thing we can do, to be alert to where people are stuck at young ages and offer them that parent, no matter who they are. Because I've
Right.
heard people say, I don't want to parent my husband. Why not? Why not?
Most husbands
That's
need
love.
parenting.
Well, you know,
Wives
Yeah.
too.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what on our episode that we just did last week, we talked about how love really is the answer. Love's the answer to every
Positivity.
question, you know. But you know, with what's happening in the country right now, there is so much division. Now that really does break my heart. It breaks my heart. But how does this type of knowledge impact what's going on, and how can we use this knowledge to help make it better?
Well, to me, the division is reflecting the division in our own souls. And fortunately, we can do something about this, whether we work on it externally with our husbands and wives,
Right.
or internally, or out in our world. We can do something. Because every one of us, I believe, has separated from some part of our physicality, emotionality, mentality, or spirituality. And what we do is listen deeply to that human voice that is in every part of us, expressing itself in every part of us, and respond soulfully with our most mature humanity.
So I want to go
So
back a little bit
true.
to what you said about how our immune system biologically is internal, right? Because we don't see the cells working, but the psychological immune system is external. But in the beginning, we talked about men as an example, where young boys, and they learn a certain behavior, where that externalization of behavior, let's say crying or something like that, is actually suppressed. It becomes internalized and forgotten. Okay, so now the question has to do with, how do you bring that out? And what kind of process do you use or work with your patients or clients to bring that out, so it actually becomes a living thing now, rather than something that's squashed and put away?
Well, I use the metaphor of an abscess
Okay,
that comes to the surface at some point.
perfect for a surgeon.
That-
I understand that.
Speak people's language.
Yes,
right?
right.
So things come up when a person's ready. And sometimes it comes up through illness.
Yeah.
And to me, it's whatever it takes to get people to move. If an illness isn't serious enough, a person may not move enough. And so sometimes I'm a little disappointed if people get well too fast, because they don't get to that deeper wellness of embracing some lost part of themselves or their lives.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool a little bit about that whole idea of illness as something that is beneficial. That's a really interesting idea, because I think that's the basis of one of your books too.
Yes.
So yeah.
Meaning that our souls, our emotional bodies and minds are communicating in every single illness. I think of it as upstream. You have a physical body, and upstream is the emotional body that's communicating downstream through the physical body.
Yeah.
We have a mind upstream from both of those, communicating through the emotional body and the physical body. So any physical illness is communicating what's going on upstream. So once we hear that, and we work at all levels, physical and emotional and mental, then it's not just gone temporarily, it's gone because we got to the source.
Interesting. That's
I
really
love that. You know,
interesting.
one of the things that I have found in my journey in life, I've facilitated mastermind, and I've learned that for a person to really grow to their fullest potential, they've got to be in an environment of love. And they've got to love themselves first. And sometimes, as oddly as this may seem, you've got to breathe hope, belief, and love into other people sometimes before they even start to believe it themselves. It's crazy. But you know, one of the things I do is I work with people for a long period of time, because sometimes it takes years of just loving on them. You know, I remember one time my husband, you know, this is my second marriage, his second marriage as well. But when we first got married, you know, he said, "What do you do with all these people?" I said, "I got them right here in my bosom. I'm just loving on them. I'm just loving on these people. I'm loving on them until, like you said, till they're ready." Because it having this conversation right now to me has brought a whole new meaning to, you know, what's the first and greatest commandment? You know, love your God.
Yep.
Whatever that God is, with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then the second greatest commandment is love thy neighbor as thyself, because it's that deep love. You've got to really love someone when somebody is hurting you to say, okay, hurting people hurt others. So
Right.
you're hurting me because you're hurting. So I'm going to be patient instead of getting mad at the person for hurting you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a lot of maturity
Huge.
that has to go in it's involved in this. But if you're just made aware of what's going on, like, to me, this is, I mean, everybody needs to know what you're saying. Everybody needs to read your books. Everybody needs to start to understand this, because, you know, it will change the way people respond and react.
Right.
I mean, it's really, this is deep stuff. I mean, it's really deep stuff. I like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like this kind of
It
stuff.
goes right in with all the stuff we've been talking about in terms of the, you know, not only the diamond matrix, but how it integrates with everything else, you know, in the major points of being healthy and achieving health. I mean, you know, that's really, you know, it really is the crucial part of the diamond matrix that I came up with. And I kind of talked about it during our episode, the difficulty I had coming out with that area of emotional, spiritual health, because it's such an abstraction for so many of us. But it, you know, when I finally hit up on it, that's the vital last piece that you have to have in order to have a complete, you know, system of wellness, you know, and how this fits into everything. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I know you have a little familiarity with that, so I think it's really interesting to develop this even further. So yeah.
And Brad, I'm glad you brought up God, because by definition, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so every part of us, he must be in somewhere. And to me, finding that, so we can love our sadness, we can love our anger, we can love our fear, we can love our mind, even with all its storytelling, and find value in every part of ourselves.
Right. And you know, I think it's so important because, look, we're all trying to do the best job we can, right?
Yes. Well,
I mean,
I certainly do.
I think most
Yeah.
people are just trying to do the best job they can. And, you know, hurting people hurt others. You know, you become a parent and you've got childhood wounds of your own, and then you're trying to help your kids. And, you know, it just made me think, I've got 5 kids, and I was talking to one of my sons, and, you know, he's just made some decisions in college that, you know, this is what I think is so funny, is I think to myself, man, if you knew all the crazy things I did, you know, but we all make them, and that's how we learn. But he said something to me, and he said, you know, Mom, I know I've got to prove I'm worthy. And that just killed me when he said that. I said,
Oh, wow.
You were worthy the day you were born. I said, you're worthy. You are worthy right now. I said, you might have made some decisions that didn't end up with the results you wanted them to be, but you're worthy. And you were worthy the day you were born. You will always be worthy. But it made me think of, and we kind of touched a little bit about this before we started the broadcast, that our kids are growing up in a world where, as toddlers, they've got a cell phone in front of them. They've got social media.
Yeah.
They're comparing themselves to everyone else. And we live in a different society now. And I just wonder, what will that impact be on that generation that they're thinking that they're not worthy when of course you're worthy. And it really, I think the generation that's coming up, they need this information. I mean, we all need it, right? But I think they're going to need it even more than our generation.
Yeah.
And I just want to compliment you on catching that, because that's how we help the mental immune system, by catching these false beliefs people have
Right.
and the stories they make to cover them up, and offering our perspective. Of course you're worthy.
Yes, yes. Now, what do our viewers need to do to get in touch with you, or to find your books and to really start digging deeper into this topic?
My website is anneredelfs.com, and I would love to hear from you. Let's have a conversation.
And you know what? I'm telling you, one of the many hats that I wear, I'm executive managing director for the Dallas chapter here in eWoman Network, and we've got to have you come and speak. And we've got to do,
Yeah, it's
I
really
think
great.
you need your own show. Who thinks Anne needs her own show? Because this is vital information for the healing of our country.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. It's like, how can we help heal one another if we're all
can't heal
messed up ourselves, you know? So we just thank you so much, Anne, for coming on the show. Is there any parting words you'd like to say before we close up?
Just be attentive to that soul that we all have, and listen in the heart.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
great.
Now,
That's
let
great.
me tell you, one of the things that Dr. Lee is, and I have been discussing, is we think, and when I say we, I think I'm talking about you too, we think that we should have one of our viewers come on the show and give you Botox during the show.
Yeah, live Botox.
Live Botox, so we can talk about it. We can discuss the ins and out, you know, and we're going to come up with some type of contest. And we're just interested. Number one, would that be something you would be interested in doing?
Yeah.
Number two, if you have any ideas on really fun things that we can do for a contest, you know, sharing, commenting. I mean, look, we're not pros at this, but he's a pro of giving you Botox. And we just really want to get you engaged. So if you're in or around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, obviously, if you want to come up to the area, we'd love to have you as well. But please give us your thoughts so we know. And please
They can
share.
make comments on the bottom.
Yeah, comment.
thanks, yeah.
And please share this episode out. And if anyone has any problems getting in touch with Anne, comment, let me know, and I'll make sure that you get in touch.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lee, thank you so much for all you do.
No, my pleasure.
We love you. We love
you.
you. And
you very much, Anne.
until our next episode, share your love.
And live healthy.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.